Is a disaster before it started. Why is it a disaster? Because it's got her name attached to it. It looks like it's been markled already. There being hundreds of thousands of pounds worth of tickets still available at the Australian wellness retreat.
I would hope, anyway, nobody is considering acknowledging Prince Harry as a mental health expert or Meghan Markle. It shouldn't be a self-promotion tool. It shouldn't be something that you say one day, I'm going to reinvent myself as a mental health expert because I think it's going to get me more content.
The Australian wellness retreat still has tickets worth hundreds of thousands of pounds left unsold. This isn't guesswork or a rough estimate. It's the actual commercial situation. The event was publicly labelled as sold out. But that clearly isn't the case, and reports are now showing the exact monetary value of the remaining inventory in the press.
Overall, guys, what I will say about the packaging is that it looks cheap, especially the tea. I feel like these tins are very cheap. And for somebody who is obsessed with packaging, Meghan Markle, did you know that this sticker is crooked? I believe it's also crooked on the back here. Yeah. So it's one of these things where if you are claiming to put out, you could say, somewhat a premium product, if you are claiming to want to elevate the everyday, you might want to make sure your manufacturer knows what they're doing and avoiding putting...
We're talking about hundreds of thousands of pounds in a venue that only holds around 300 people, with ticket prices set between 2,000 and 3,000 Australian dollars. The math makes it clear. A large share of the seats are still open. Even with weeks of heavy promotion around the event, it hasn't brought in the level of response needed at that price point to be considered commercially successful. The growing security narrative around the retreat needs to be viewed in that light. When an event is truly sold out and performing well, security is handled as part of normal operations. Crowd control is in place. Venue security is set. Standard measures are followed, the same ones professional organisers use whenever there's a high-profile guest involved.
They're worried, aren't they? Harry and Meghan seem to be very worried about the security in Australia. Very convenient this, isn't it? Because we see the Home Office have still not confirmed whether Harry will be getting his taxpayer-funded security.
You don't usually see press coverage about security concerns being pushed in the weeks leading up to an event that's already sold out. That's not how it tends to work. When an event hasn't sold out though, when there are still hundreds of thousands of pounds worth of tickets available and organisers are still trying to fill those spots, the security narrative starts to play a different role. It gives a way out. It sets up a situation where the event can be called off for reasons that don't point back to weak sales. Security threats are easy for people to understand and accept. Low ticket demand isn't. Di Davies, the former head of Royal Protection, is one of the most credible voices on the question of whether Harry and Meghan should have taxpayer-funded security in Australia. His view is straightforward. Unless there's a clear and proven security risk, there's no basis for public funding to cover security for what is essentially a commercial and personal visit. The reasoning behind that position is fairly simple.
We'd like you to pay for unvetted illegals in the UK, but you're going to pick up the bill for our security. I think not, Poppet. So we're seeing all of these stories come out that they're really worried about security. But then we see another story drop today that there's hundreds of thousands of pounds worth of tickets still available at this wellness retreat.
Davies puts it plainly. Over the years, through their own actions, Harry and Meghan have shown what he sees as a lack of a basic, common sense approach to security. The key point he raises is simple. For anyone high profile, the first line of protection is keeping a low profile. Stay out of constant media attention. Avoid places where intense scrutiny is expected. In his view, Harry and Meghan have taken the opposite path since stepping away from royal duties. They've leaned into media attention as part of a commercial approach. They've chosen highly visible settings to drive coverage and public engagement, which their brand relies on.
They're complete and utter hypocrites in every which way a human can be. It's like Harry preaching to people about where they should fly and they should only stay in sort of like eco-conscious places, and they use private jets and have motorcades of security fleets of vehicles following them.
You can't push for maximum public exposure as part of a business strategy and then argue that the same exposure creates a security risk that the public should pay to handle. That position doesn't hold up. To the extent that any security risk is real, It comes from the choices made by the Sussex operation, both in the past and right now.
We all know we need to drink about 2 litres of water a day, and then it just makes you wee the whole time, doesn't it? But we know we need to take a bit of vitamin C. I mean, that is just basic wellness advice. What exactly will Meghan be giving at this wellness retreat that goes beyond that?
Requesting Australian and British taxpayers to cover the security impact of those decisions is a very specific and bold ask. The Invictus Games aspect adds another layer to the discussion. Davies backs the Invictus Games and the role it plays, recognising and supporting injured service members and veterans. He's clear on that point. He also makes a distinction. Security for those attending the Games, including veterans and their families, is a valid use of public funds. What he questions is the personal protection for Harry and Meghan as organisers and attendees. The focus is on the security tied directly to them as individuals, separate from the event and the people involved in it. That difference matters. The public value of the Invictus Games is clear and justified.
Dr. Alison McClyman, who is disgusted at the fact that Prince Harry is now being seen as a poster boy to give mental health expertise. He is not a mental health expert, someone that speaks brazenly about drug taking in their memoir.
The case for public funding becomes much less clear when it comes to providing personal security for a couple running a commercial wellness retreat and taking part in a fee-based speaking event.
What has Harry accomplished that allows him to stand in front of a room full of entrepreneurs to talk about leadership? He is America's favorite Nepo baby.
The Home Office still hasn't confirmed whether Harry will be given taxpayer-funded security. Back on December 7th, they said it was under review. Since then, nothing. No updates. The timing stands out. The security concerns narrative starts picking up right as the Australia trip gets closer, and at the same time the gap in ticket sales is becoming more visible. That timing suggests a narrative doing more than one job at once. Dr. Alison McClyman, who holds 4 degrees in the mental health field and has 15 years of professional experience, including a substantial amount of unpaid work, raises a clear and grounded concern about Harry being positioned as a keynote speaker on mental health at the Australian summit. Her point isn't dismissing his personal experience. It's about the difference between lived experience and professional expertise. In this field, that difference matters. Getting it wrong carries real consequences.
No, I've said it many times on many media outlets at home and abroad, unless there's a specific security risk, neither they nor anyone else connected with them should get security unless the evidence shows that they warrant it. And through their own behaviour over the years, they've shown that they have a total disregard for how a commonsensical approach to security.
Dr. McClyman's point is very specific. Harry does not have formal qualifications in workplace trauma, psychology, or the neurobiology of trauma, areas that the summit's professional participants have spent years studying and investing heavily in to master. He does bring personal experience with certain mental health challenges, along with access to support that came with his position and resources. But that's different from having a structured, in-depth understanding of mental health conditions, how they work, how they're treated, and the particular nature of psychological harm in the workplace. Those are areas the professional attendees at a serious mental health summit are expected to cover. The commercial side of this also matters.
She has to blame her own choices, her own preferences, and blame it on others because she doesn't have the balls or the ovaries to admit that that's how she likes it.
Harry is paid speaking fees that professionals with Dr. McClyman's level of training and experience typically wouldn't receive. That's the usual celebrity premium. A well-known name brings in ticket sales and media attention in a way qualifications on their own usually can't. In the mental health field though, that premium comes with trade-offs. People who have spent years building real expertise, often while being underpaid, end up losing space on platforms where their knowledge would be more useful. The kind of insights that could genuinely benefit professionals at a workplace psychological safety summit get replaced by the personal story of someone who has aligned himself with the mental health space as part of a commercial. Reputation, strategy. Dr. Lehman puts it bluntly. She suggests Harry may have chosen to present himself as a mental health expert because I think it's going to get me more content or, God forbid, more money. Mental health isn't meant to be used for self-promotion. It shouldn't be treated as a sales tool.
Well, it does, and in fairness, he pays allegedly for his own. But as you said, these charities are costing us, the taxpayers, because rest assured, with the Invictus Games, there have to be additional security there. And I'm all for protecting ex-servicemen, quite rightly too. In Australia, I'm not quite sure what it's all about. As far as I'm concerned, it's a commercial venture, and let them get on with it, and they can pay for everything.
Linking a celebrity name to a serious professional field just to unlock speaking fees and draw a platform that credentials alone wouldn't create is a pattern that ends up doing real damage to both the field and the people it's meant to help. That's the exact issue raised in the IAP privacy keynote, according to the anonymous professional source mentioned in earlier reporting, and it shows up again in the mental health space. In both situations, a discipline that requires real professional expertise is being used as a stage for someone whose connection to it is mainly commercial and about reputation rather than deep knowledge. In each case, that speaker takes a spot that could have gone to a qualified professional who would have delivered more direct value to the audience. At the same time, the audience pays the price higher ticket costs, missed opportunities, and less relevant content, all because a celebrity name was prioritised over expertise. The term pay-to-play is used to describe it accurately. The organiser brings Harry in because his presence boosts ticket sales. Harry participates because he receives speaking fees. Meanwhile, mental health professionals who have spent years building real expertise aren't compensated at the same level, and they don't drive attendance in the same way. From a business standpoint, it makes sense. From a professional standpoint, it raises serious concerns.
Meghan is trying to be so many different things, and I just don't think that she herself is fully aware of who she is. So you can't be I can be authentic, exactly who I am. Piss people off, don't piss them off. I know where I stand, and I make mistakes. I'll come back to the line. But it's very difficult to be front and center at the Kardashian 70th party and then also be many of the things that she wants.
In the mental health space, the concern is that it can actually cause harm. An audience that came to build real professional understanding in a serious field ends up getting a personal narrative instead of actual expertise. On the other side, the security situation and the ticket sales give the operational view of what the Australia trip looks like in commercial terms. The mental health keynote gives the professional view of Harry's advocacy when it's assessed by people who actually hold qualifications in the field he represents. Put together, they form a consistent picture that has been building through weeks of coverage. An operation that presents itself as purposeful, expert-led, and commercially successful.
I just hope that whoever's now in charge of that force has the ability to look wider than the narrow, secular people who seem to influence his decision-making.
When looked at by people with the right expertise and a clear understanding of how these events work commercially, it points to something much more limited and more concerning. There are still hundreds of thousands of pounds worth of tickets unsold for the retreat. The security discussion appears to function as a way out if needed. The mental health keynote has taken a slot that could have gone to a fully qualified professional, and the issue of taxpayer-funded security is still unresolved, which in itself says something about how strong that case really is. What happens next with the retreat will be telling, whether it goes ahead or whether security concerns end up being used to justify cancelling it. It will also be worth noting whether the Australian government agrees to provide security funding, and what reasoning is given if it does. At the same time, it's worth watching whether the mental health professionals at the summit raise the same kinds of questions that were asked in the privacy keynote context. Questions around qualifications, evidence, practical value, and what the audience is actually getting from their professional investment. The presentation carries on. The underlying substance remains what it has always been.
Never have we seen a showbiz fall from grace quite like it. Meghan Markle, desperate Duchess, has hit rock bottom, announcing her return to acting.
In their own way, I think they have compromised themselves by saying that this is a mental health summit by choosing a keynote speaker who is not a mental health expert.
The experts involved the former head of Royal Protection and the mental health practitioner with 4 degrees and 15 years of experience are both very clear about what they see. Public funding for security should not be part of this. The keynote speaker is not operating as a trained expert in the field. The retreat still has not sold out. These are the facts on the ground. What surrounds them is a different kind of narrative. The question of taxpayer-funded security needs a closer and more careful breakdown, because it links the specific Australia trip to a wider pattern around how the Sussex operation has approached the use of public resources in relation to private commercial activity. In the UK, the Raybeck arrangement, the government committee responsible for determining security for members of the royal family, has already been the subject of ongoing legal action brought by Harry. His argument is that when he is in Britain, he should automatically receive armed police protection funded by the taxpayer, regardless of the individual risk assessment in place at the time. The courts have rejected that position, ruling that the case-by-case approach used by Raybeck is both lawful and appropriate. Harry is currently appealing that decision. The Australian security question sits separately, but it follows a similar line of debate.
He seems to want to maintain a supposedly private life, but in a very public arena, by, putting himself forward as things like a keynote speaker in mental health. I would hope, anyway, nobody is considering acknowledging Prince Harry as a mental health expert or Meghan Markle. I would sincerely hope that's not the line we're going down, but who knows?
In Australia, security for visiting dignitaries and other high-profile figures is handled by authorities on a case-by-case basis. They look at the specific risks involved and the exact nature of the visit. A state visit from the King is given the full level of diplomatic protection expected for that role. A commercial wellness retreat and a paid speaking engagement by a private individual who happens to have been born a prince falls into a different category entirely, one that calls for a much more limited and proportionate assessment. The security narrative around the Karma Australia trip appears to be working to shift how the visit is framed. By putting out coverage focused on stalker accounts, social media infiltrators, and general concerns around the event, it reshapes a commercial trip into something that looks like it carries a higher level of threat. The impression being built is of a specific and credible risk, one that would justify increased security measures and in turn justify those costs being covered outside of the Sussex operation. Davies' position is that this impression is being shaped rather than firmly supported by evidence. The accounts being referenced as security risks, including Meghan's mole and others in the critical royal commentary space, have not issued threats of violence. Their activity has been about planning to attend and reporting what they observe. That sits in the realm of journalism, not violent intent.
To be in a room with Meghan Markle and how the tables have turned, and she's not as clever as she thinks.
Yeah.
She doesn't get that this is not good for her.
Work hard, nobody's going to respect her, and then she does this, where she intentionally falls out with people, intentionally does foolishness to people, so she will never, ever have
A democratic country's security system shouldn't be used in a way that stops journalism by labelling it as a security risk instead. The cost side of this is what matters most when it comes to the public interest.
It shouldn't be a self-promotion tool. It shouldn't be something that you say one day, I'm going to reinvent myself as a mental health expert because I think it's going to get me more content or, God forbid, more money. I mean, this is a serious, it is a medical field.
Harry has stated publicly that he covers his own security in the United States. That protection is privately arranged and paid for through commercial means. The argument for taxpayer-funded security in Britain comes down to cost. Private security is far more expensive than a police protection detail. The ongoing legal case is, in effect, an attempt to move that expense onto public funding. If the same reasoning is applied to Australia, it would mean Australian taxpayers effectively covering security for a commercial wellness retreat that has not sold all its tickets. A retreat that still generates income for its organisers through speaking fees and merchandise, rather than through any public service role. Davies' framing is straightforward. If there is clear, evidence-based threat, then security is justified. The question then becomes who carries the cost, and whether that cost links back to the choices that created the risk in the first place. In this view, Harry and Meghan's high public visibility is a deliberate commercial decision. Any security implications that come with it sit alongside that decision and should be funded privately. The mental health angle connects to a wider pattern in how Sussex advocacy is presented, and it adds another layer to that broader discussion.
Therefore, I can create content, I can go and give speeches, I can go and give talks and position myself as an expert. Those of us who are experts in mental health, we've dedicated the time to study mental health. We've dedicated the time to study social psychology, neuropsychology. In my own case, the neurobiology of trauma. These are big topics. It's not something that you just pick up a book one day and say, I can go and speak on.
Harry and Meghan have made mental health awareness a core part of their public identity after stepping away from royal duties. The Archwell Foundation has been linked to work in the mental health space. Harry has also spoken openly about his own struggles with mental health. The experiences he has described across different settings are generally understood to be genuine based on what can be observed externally. His access to therapy and ongoing support from mental health professionals is also a matter of record. Still, there is a clear separation between going through mental health challenges and receiving treatment for them, which Harry has, and having the professional training needed to guide others within the field, which he does not have. That distinction is important because the people listening to his mental health advocacy often include individuals in real distress. In those moments, there is a risk that what is essentially personal experience is received as if it were professional guidance. Dr. McKell's concern sits exactly here. The issue is that audiences may struggle to separate Harry's personal account, which is what he is sharing, from formal expertise, which is what the setting suggests. When someone appears as a keynote speaker at a mental health summit, there is a reasonable expectation that their place on that stage comes from relevant professional background. In Harry's case, that platform comes from celebrity status and public recognition rather than from formal development within the mental health profession. That difference carries weight. Mental health conditions are serious.
Duplicitous, self-centered, vile, disloyal hypocrite.
Brat, to be honest, and very, very...
Wrong or misleading advice around these topics can lead to real harm. The issue of celebrity voices entering medical and health-related spaces is something professionals across different fields have already flagged. It's a pattern where a well-known name draws attention, and that attention gets mistaken for authority the person hasn't actually built through training or practice. Mental health isn't the only area affected by this, but it is especially sensitive. That's because people's own lived experience is so central in mental health that personal stories can sometimes seem just as weighty as formal expertise, even when they are not the same thing. Harry's own account of his mental health struggles matters in its proper setting. It reflects one person's experience. And for some people going through similar challenges, it can feel relatable and even reassuring. That kind of connection can be meaningful, but the role of a keynote speaker at a workplace psychological safety summit is different. It isn't mainly about offering personal reassurance to people who relate. It's about providing structured, professional insight to practitioners building serious expertise in a complex field. In that context, personal experience alone doesn't meet the requirement. In some cases, it may not be directly relevant at all. What becomes more relevant is the professional knowledge held by Dr. McClayman and others in her field, built over many years of formal work and study. The difference is also reflected in the fees. Harry's speaking rates are shaped by his celebrity status and the commercial value of his name. Dr. McClain and her colleagues are paid based on professional expertise in a field that doesn't operate on celebrity branding or premium personal narratives. The result is a market where visibility and fame are rewarded more than qualifications. Not because the system has decided celebrity is better for mental health work, but because events are structured around ticket sales and media attention rather than educational value. From an organiser's point of view, booking Harry is a commercial decision tied to demand and attention. A qualified professional who might otherwise hold that slot is replaced. The audience, expecting professional development, receives something different from what they are actually paying for. This is the core issue Dr. McKell is pointing to. Not a personal criticism of Harry, whose experiences are real and whose mental health advocacy has value in the right context, but the broader impact on a professional field being used in ways that don't align with its standards. The same pattern appears again in the security discussion. One side frames a commercial event in a way that invites public funding. The other places a celebrity speaker into a professional setting where expertise normally comes from long formal development, not reputation. In Davis's framing, it comes back to something simple. If it's a commercial trip, it should carry its own costs, including security. If it's a professional conference, the expectation is professional expertise. In this case, neither standard is fully met in the way the public presentation suggests.
It was wonderful. It was so great for the monarchy. I liked the message, all the things. When they left, I was really more just talking about like their decisions through the Netflix, through the trying to put 50 pounds of shit in a five-pound bag. It just seemed like had they been managed properly or really been strategic, like played chess, it would have been such a different outcome. I don't know what happened to Amal and George. They're close friends. Like, I want to be best friends with George and Amal way more than I want to be at the Kardashians. Like David Beckham and Victoria, like, where's that? Like,